Hey there, and welcome to the Magic Snail Channel. This is where we share real life stories about people dealing with all kinds of situations. Some are funny, some are messy, and some are downright unbelievable. If you like hearing stories that feel real and keep you curious, you'll feel right at home here. So go ahead, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want more. We've got plenty of stories waiting for you.
The flash drive sat on Mason Reed's kitchen counter like a coiled snake. He'd found it wedged in his work locker that morning, unmarked except for a single word written in black marker: truth. His hands trembled as he inserted it into his laptop. The audio file was 13 minutes long. Mason pressed play and heard his life crumble in real time. God, Mason is so boring, Sabrina's voice came through crystal clear. I swear, sometimes I wonder what I was thinking when I married him. Cody's laugh followed. Come on, babe, he's not that bad. Just predictable. Predictable? The man hasn't surprised me once in 15 years. He wakes up at 5, kisses my forehead like I'm his grandmother, and goes to work. Same routine every single day. At least he's consistent, Cody said, but Mason could hear the mockery in his voice. Consistently dull. You know what he said to me yesterday? He asked if I wanted to go to Home Depot with him on Saturday. Home Depot, Cody. Like that's some kind of romantic date. Speaking of dates, when are you going to tell him about us? Mason's blood turned to ice. The coffee mug slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. I don't know, Sabrina continued. Maybe never. He's so pathetic, I almost feel sorry for him. Besides, he pays the mortgage. And I get the benefits, Cody said. Poor bastard has no idea his best friend is... Mason slammed the laptop shut. The silence that followed was deafening. He sat in his kitchen for 2 hours, staring at the broken coffee mug. The ceramic pieces looked like his marriage, sharp, scattered, impossible to put back together. 3 weeks earlier, Mason's world had made sense. He'd wake at 5 a.m., brew coffee, and watch Sabrina sleep for exactly 3 minutes before kissing her forehead. She'd mumble something about him being too early, and he'd whisper that he loved her. The robotics plant where he worked wasn't glamorous, but it paid well. Mason had been there 12 years, maintaining the massive assembly line robots that built car parts. He understood machines better than people. Machines were logical. They broke down for reasons you could diagnose and fix. Cody Walsh had started at the plant 6 months ago. Young, charismatic, with an easy smile and the kind of confidence Mason envied. Within weeks, Cody had become the golden boy of the maintenance crew. Everyone loved him. Hey, Mason, Cody had called out that Tuesday morning. How's the wife? She's good, Mason replied, checking the hydraulic pressure on Robot 7. Still working on that kitchen renovation I started last year. Man, you really need to finish that project. Sabrina's been complaining about those half-done cabinets for months. Mason looked up. She's been complaining to you? We talk sometimes when I drop by. She makes amazing coffee, by the way. Way better than this plant swill. You've been to my house? Just a couple times. She called when you were at that training seminar in Cleveland. Said the garbage disposal was acting up. I fixed it for her. Mason felt a strange tightness in his chest. She didn't mention that. Probably didn't want to make you feel bad about not finishing the renovation. Cody clapped Mason on the shoulder. Don't worry about it, buddy. We're friends. I'm happy to help. That evening, Mason asked Sabrina about the garbage disposal. Oh, that, she said, not looking up from her laptop. It was making that grinding noise again. Cody was in the neighborhood and offered to take a look. Since when do you have Cody's number? Since he gave it to me at the company picnic. Said I should call if I ever needed help with the house while you're working. Mason wanted to ask more questions, but Sabrina's tone had that edge that meant the conversation was over. He went to bed feeling unsettled. The next week, he came home to find Cody's truck in his driveway. Hey there, Mason. Cody emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag, just helping Sabrina move some boxes. What boxes? The Christmas decorations. She wanted them up in the attic. Mason looked at his wife, who was standing in the doorway wearing a dress he'd never seen before. Her hair was different too, styled in a way that made her look younger. I tried to wait for you, Sabrina said, but you've been working so much overtime lately. I haven't been working overtime. Well, you're never here when I need you. Cody stepped between them. Hey, no worries. I was happy to help. That's what friends do, right? Mason nodded, but something felt wrong. The garage smelled like Sabrina's perfume mixed with something else, something masculine and unfamiliar. Over the next 2 weeks, Mason started noticing things. Sabrina's phone face down at dinner. She showered more often. She'd started wearing makeup to go grocery shopping. "You look nice today," he told her one morning. "I look the same as always," she replied, but her cheeks flushed. At work, Cody was different too. More confident, more smug. He'd make jokes about married life that felt too specific, too knowing. "You know what your problem is, Mason?" Cody said during their lunch break. "You're too nice. Women don't respect nice guys." "Sabrina respects me?" "Does she?" Cody's smile was sharp. "When's the last time she initiated act? When's the last time she asked about your day? When's the last time she looked at you the way she looked at me yesterday?" Mason's sandwich turned to cardboard in his mouth. "What do you mean?" "Nothing, man. Just saying you might want to step up your game before someone else does." That night, Mason tried to initiate intimacy with his wife. Sabrina pushed him away. "I'm tired," she said. "We haven't been together in 3 weeks." "I know, I'm just going through something right now." "What kind of something?" Sabrina turned away. "I don't want to talk about it." Mason lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling. The woman next to him felt like a stranger. The breaking point came on a Thursday. Mason had called in sick with a stomach bug, planning to spend the day resting. Around noon, he heard voices coming from the garage. His garage, where he kept his tools, his workbench, his father's old Camaro that he'd been restoring for 10 years. Mason crept to the window and peered through the blinds. Cody's truck was parked in the driveway, but he couldn't see into the garage from this angle. He grabbed his keys and walked outside, planning to circle around the back of the house. As he reached the corner, he heard laughter. Sabrina's laugh, but different. Lighter, happier than he'd heard it in years. "God, this is so much better than my apartment," Cody's voice carried through the open garage door. "We should be careful," Sabrina replied. "Mason might come home early." "So what if he does? Guy's clueless. Even if he caught us, he'd probably apologize for interrupting." Their laughter cut through Mason like broken glass. He wanted to charge into the garage, wanted to confront them, wanted to fight. Instead, he stood frozen behind his own house, listening to his wife and best friend mock him. "I feel guilty sometimes," Sabrina said. "He's not a bad person. He's not a good person either. He's just there, like furniture. Expensive furniture. He does pay for everything. That's all he's good for." A paycheck and a place to meet. Mason stumbled back to his truck and drove aimlessly for 3 hours. When he returned home, Cody's truck was gone. Sabrina was in the kitchen making dinner like nothing had happened. "Feeling better?" she asked without looking at him. "Yeah," Mason lied. That night, he didn't go to bed. He sat in his truck in the driveway, staring at his house and wondering who the people inside it were. The next day at work, Cody was all smiles. "How you doing, buddy? Heard you were sick yesterday." "I'm fine." "Good to hear. By the way, I stopped by to check on Sabrina, made sure she was okay while you were laid up." Mason's hands tightened on his wrench. "That was thoughtful. That's what friends do. Speaking of which, want to grab a beer after work? There's something I want to talk to you about." Mason agreed, hoping against hope that Cody would confess, would apologize, would give him a chance to forgive and forget. Instead, Cody spent an hour talking about his promotion prospects and his plans to buy a house. He never mentioned Sabrina once. "You're quiet tonight," Cody observed. "Just thinking." "About what?" Mason looked at his beer, then at his friend's face. "About loyalty, about what it means to trust someone. Heavy stuff. Everything okay at home? Is it?" Cody's smile faltered for just a moment. "What do you mean?" "You tell me." They stared at each other across the table. Mason waited for Cody to break, to admit what he'd done, to show even a hint of remorse. Instead, Cody laughed. "You're acting weird, man. Maybe you should talk to someone, like a therapist or something." "Maybe I should." "Seriously, though, paranoia can be a sign of depression. You might want to get checked out." Mason left the bar feeling smaller than when he'd arrived. Even confronting his betrayer had been turned around on him, made him feel like the problem. For the next week, he tried to pretend everything was normal. He woke at 5 a.m., kissed Sabrina's forehead, went to work, came home, ate dinner, watched TV, went to bed. The routine that had once comforted him now felt like a prison. Sabrina barely spoke to him. When she did, it was about practical things: bills, groceries, the neighbor's barking dog. She never asked about his day, never touched him, never looked at him with anything but mild irritation. At work, Cody was more popular than ever. He'd been promoted to shift supervisor, which meant he now outranked Mason. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Congratulations," Mason said when he heard the news. "Thanks, buddy. I know this might be awkward, me being your boss now, but nothing's going to change between us." Everything had already changed. Mason just hadn't accepted it yet. The flash drive appeared in his locker the following Monday. Mason stared at it for a full minute before taking it home. Now, sitting in his kitchen with his marriage shattered around him like broken ceramic, Mason finally understood what he had to do. He couldn't go back to pretending. He couldn't forgive and forget. He couldn't be the nice guy who apologized for being betrayed. The old Mason Reed was dead. What rose from his ashes would be something else entirely. Mason didn't go to work the next day, or the day after that. He called in sick, citing severe depression, and his supervisor, who had always liked Mason's steady reliability, told him to take all the time he needed. "Mental health is important," the supervisor said. "We'll hold your position." Mason wasn't planning to come back. He spent the first week in his truck, parked at different locations around the city: the lake, the industrial district, the old steel mill that had been abandoned for 20 years. He ate gas station food and slept in the cramped cab, ignoring the calls and texts from Sabrina. She was concerned at first. "Where are you? Are you okay? Please come home." By the third day, her tone had shifted. "This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child." By the seventh day, she'd stopped calling altogether. Mason used the time to think, to plan, to remember who he used to be before marriage and mortgages and the grinding routine of responsible adulthood. He'd been a boxer in high school. Not great, but good enough to win more fights than he lost. He'd been stronger then, angrier, more willing to take risks. College had softened him. Marriage had tamed him. And 15 years of steady employment had turned him into exactly what Cody had called him: furniture. But furniture could be moved, rearranged, repurposed. On the eighth day, Mason drove to the outskirts of town to a property he'd inherited from his uncle 5 years earlier. It was 20 acres of scrubland with a small house and a large garage that had once served as a mechanic's shop. He and Sabrina had talked about selling it, but the market was bad, and Mason had been sentimental about keeping it. Now he was glad he had. The house was dusty, but livable. The garage was full of old tools and equipment, including a complete automotive lift and enough space to work on multiple vehicles. Mason spent the day cleaning, organizing, planning. He drove back to his real house after dark, parking down the street and watching through the windows. Sabrina was on the couch, laptop open, probably video chatting with Cody. She looked relaxed, happy even. Mason felt nothing watching her. That was the most disturbing part. Not anger, not sadness, just a cold, empty numbness where his love for her used to be. He went inside while she was in the shower, packed 2 suitcases with his clothes and personal items, and left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone for a while. Need to think. Don't wait up." By the time Sabrina found the note, Mason was already back at his uncle's property, sitting in the dark garage with a beer and a notebook, writing down everything he knew about Cody Walsh. Cody was from Ohio originally. He'd moved to town 6 months ago for the job at the plant. He lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the south side, drove a leased Ford F-150, and had been married once before. His ex-wife lived in Cincinnati with their 8-year-old daughter. He was charming, confident, and fundamentally selfish. He saw opportunities and took them without considering the consequences for others. He'd probably been cheating on his ex-wife too. Most importantly, Cody was careless. He took risks because he'd never faced real consequences for his actions. He assumed other people, especially nice guys like Mason, would always be too weak or too decent to fight back. Mason intended to prove him wrong. The first phase of his plan was simple: disappear completely. Let Cody and Sabrina think they'd won, that Mason had simply given up and walked away. Let them get comfortable, careless, overconfident. He called the plant and formally resigned, citing family emergency. His supervisor was disappointed but understanding. Mason had always been a good employee. Nobody questioned his reasons for leaving. He closed his joint bank account with Sabrina, transferring half the money to a new account at a different bank. He canceled his credit cards, his gym membership, his subscription to the local newspaper. He methodically erased Mason Reed from the city's records. The second phase was transformation. Mason had let himself go soft over the years, not fat, but soft, comfortable. He still had the frame of an athlete, but he'd lost the edge. He found his old boxing coach, Ray Martinez, working at a gym in the Warehouse district. Ray was 65 now, gray-haired and arthritic, but his eyes still had the predatory gleam of a fighter. "Mason Reed," Ray said when he walked into the gym. "Heard you got married, settled down." "I did. It didn't work out." "Sorry to hear that. You here to get back in shape?" "I'm here to get dangerous." Ray studied him for a long moment. "That's a different thing entirely." "You sure that's what you want?" "I'm sure." "Then let's get started." Mason threw himself into training with the obsession of a man who had nothing left to lose. He was at the gym by 6 a.m. every morning, running, lifting, hitting the heavy bag until his hands bled. Ray worked with him on technique, reminding him of combinations he'd forgotten, teaching him new ones. "You're not 20 anymore," Ray warned. "You can't just bull rush your way through fights. You need to be smart, patient, make every shot count." Mason learned patience. He learned to wait for the right moment, to set up his shots, to make his opponents make mistakes. He learned to hurt people efficiently. The third phase was intelligence gathering. Mason couldn't just walk up to Cody and Sabrina and confront them. He needed leverage, evidence, ammunition. He started by installing a small recording device in Cody's truck. Nothing sophisticated, just a basic digital recorder taped under the passenger seat. Cody was too arrogant to check for bugs, too confident in his own cleverness. The recordings were enlightening. Cody talking to friends about his married girlfriend and her pathetic husband. Cody on the phone with his ex-wife lying about having a stable job and relationship. Cody discussing a shady real estate deal with someone named Jason Crow. Jason turned out to be Cody's distant cousin, a smooth-talking real estate developer who worked in the city planning office. The two of them had been working together on some kind of insider trading scheme, using Jason's access to development plans to buy properties before they were announced for commercial development. It was illegal, but proving it would be difficult. Mason needed more evidence. He spent weeks following Jason, learning his routines, his habits, his weaknesses. Jason was a creature of habit. Lunch at the same restaurant every day, drinks at the same bar every Thursday, mistress visits every Tuesday afternoon. Mason started showing up at Jason's bar, sitting in the corner, nursing a beer and listening. It took 3 weeks, but eventually Jason got drunk enough to talk about his real estate deals loud enough for Mason to record. "The shopping center development is going to be announced next month," Jason slurred into his phone. "My cousin's girlfriend is buying the adjacent property this week. When the announcement hits, it'll triple in value." Mason smiled and finished his beer. Phase 3 was complete. The fourth phase was application. Mason had spent 3 months preparing, training, gathering intelligence. Now it was time to act. He started small. Cody's truck had been making a strange noise lately, a result of the sugar Mason had poured into the gas tank. Nothing dangerous, just annoying and expensive to fix. Cody missed a job interview because the truck broke down on the way. "Bad luck," Mason texted him. "Hope it wasn't anything important." "Just a promotion opportunity," Cody replied. "I'll get the next one." There wouldn't be a next one. Mason had sent copies of the real estate recordings to the City Ethics Board, the State Attorney General, and the local newspaper. Jason Crow was about to have a very bad week. The story broke on a Tuesday. City planning official implicated in real estate fraud. Jason's photo was on the front page of the morning paper, along with transcripts of his recorded conversations. By noon, Jason had been suspended pending investigation. By evening, the police had arrested him for corruption and insider trading. Cody called Mason that night, panicked. "Did you hear about Jason?" "Yeah, saw it on the news." "Crazy stuff." "He's my cousin. They're asking questions about anyone who might have been involved." "You weren't involved, were you?" "Of course not. But they might want to talk to me anyway." "Family connection, you know?" Mason smiled in the darkness of his garage. "I'm sure you'll be fine. You're good at talking your way out of trouble." The police did want to talk to Cody. They wanted to talk to him about several suspicious property purchases, about phone calls logged between him and Jason, about his sudden interest in real estate investment. Cody hired a lawyer with money he didn't have. The stress was showing on his face, in his work performance, in his relationship with Sabrina. "He's been acting weird lately," Sabrina complained to her friend during a phone call Mason was monitoring. "Paranoid, jumpy. It's not attractive." "Maybe he's just stressed about work," her friend suggested. "It's more than that. He keeps asking if I've noticed anyone following him, if I've seen any strange cars. He's making me nervous." Mason was patient. He let the pressure build slowly, like water behind a dam. Every few days, something else would go wrong in Cody's life. His credit card would be declined at a restaurant. His apartment manager would receive an anonymous complaint about loud music. His ex-wife would get a mysterious package containing evidence of his real estate scheme. None of it was traceable back to Mason. He was careful, methodical, invisible. By the time Christmas rolled around, Cody was a mess. The real estate investigation had cleared him of criminal wrongdoing, but the stress had cost him his promotion and his savings. His relationship with Sabrina was strained. His ex-wife was threatening to take him back to court for custody. Mason watched it all from the shadows, feeling a cold satisfaction. But he wasn't finished, not even close. The real work was just beginning. The warehouse meeting was set for January 15th. Mason had spent weeks arranging it, using a fake email account and a carefully crafted story about a potential job opportunity. Cody was desperate enough to meet anyone who might offer him steady employment. Mason arrived early, parking his truck behind the building and checking his equipment one last time. Digital camera, backup recording device, first aid kit. He wasn't planning to end Cody. That would be too easy, too clean. What he had planned was much worse. Cody's truck pulled up at exactly 8 p.m. Mason watched through the window as Cody got out, looking around nervously. The months of pressure had taken their toll. Cody had lost weight, his hair was unkempt, and he moved with the paranoid caution of a man who'd learned to expect trouble. "Hello, Cody," Mason said, stepping out of the shadows. Cody spun around, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and finally fear. "Mason? What are you doing here?" "I'm the one who sent you the email about the job." "I don't understand." "Why would you—" "Because we need to talk." Cody's hand moved toward his pocket, probably reaching for his phone. "Look, if this is about Sabrina, it's about a lot of things. But, yes, it's about Sabrina." "Mason, I can explain." "No need." "I heard your explanation already. 13 minutes of it, actually." "Want to hear it again?" Mason pulled out a small speaker and played the recording. Cody's face went white as he heard his own voice mocking Mason, calling him pathetic, laughing about the affair. "Where did you get that?" "Does it matter?" "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Cody straightened up, some of his old confidence returning. "What do you want? Money? I don't have any, thanks to whatever you did to Jason. I want you to fight me." "What?" "1-on-1. No weapons, no phones, no running away, just you and me. Settling this the old-fashioned way." Cody laughed, but it sounded forced. "You're serious? You want to fight me over her?" "I want to fight you because you're a coward. Because you took something that wasn't yours. Because you're the kind of man who kicks a dog when it's down. I'm not fighting you, Mason. You're obviously having some kind of breakdown. Then walk away. Get in your truck and drive home. But if you do, this recording goes to everyone you know. Your ex-wife, your boss, your friends, your family. Everyone will know what kind of man you really are." Cody's jaw tightened. "You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a choice. Fight me like a man, or be exposed as the coward you are." For a moment, Mason thought Cody might actually walk away. Then something shifted in his expression. Pride, maybe, or desperation. He shrugged off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. "Fine. But when I beat your ass, you leave town and never come back." "Deal." They circled each other in the empty warehouse, feet shuffling on the concrete floor. Cody was younger, taller, probably stronger. But Mason had been training for months, and more importantly, he had nothing left to lose. Cody threw the first punch, a wild haymaker that Mason easily ducked. Mason countered with a quick jab to Cody's ribs, then stepped back. "Lucky shot," Cody muttered. They engaged again. This time, Mason was more aggressive, pressing forward with a combination Ray had taught him. Left hook to the body, right cross to the jaw, step back, and reset. Cody stumbled, but stayed on his feet. "You can't do this!" Cody gasped, This is assault! Only if you press charges, but you won't because then you'd have to explain why you're here. Mason moved in again, this time targeting Cody's legs with low kicks. Cody wasn't a trained fighter. He was a barroom brawler who relied on size and aggression. Against a prepared opponent, those tactics were useless. The fight lasted 12 minutes. By the end, Cody was on the ground, bleeding from his nose and mouth, his expensive shirt torn and dirty. Mason stood over him, breathing hard but in control. "Please," Cody wheezed. "I'm sorry. I'll leave town." "I'll never see her again." "Strip." "What?" "Take off your clothes, all of them." "Mason, come on. Do it, or I'll do it for you." Cody's hands shook as he pulled off his shirt, his pants, his underwear. He crouched on the concrete floor, trying to cover himself, looking exactly as pathetic as he'd called Mason. Mason took photos from every angle, making sure to capture Cody's face clearly. "These pictures are going to be my insurance policy. If you ever come near me or my wife again, if you ever tell anyone about what happened here tonight, these go public. Understand?" Cody nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Good. Now get dressed and get out of here. And Cody, next time you decide to betray someone, make sure they're not capable of betraying you back." Mason left the warehouse feeling lighter than he had in months. But he wasn't finished. Cody had been the catalyst, but Sabrina was the real target. He drove home for the first time in 4 months, using his key to enter the house that was still technically half his. Sabrina was in the living room, watching TV. She looked up when he walked in, her face cycling through the same emotions Cody's had. Surprise, recognition, fear. "Mason, where have you been?" "Working." "Working where?" "You quit your job months ago." "I had other work to do." She studied his face, noting the changes. He was leaner now, harder, with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly what you were capable of. "You look different," she said. "I am different." Mason sat down across from her, maintaining eye contact. "We need to talk about Cody." Sabrina's composure cracked slightly. "What about him?" "You know what about him." "I don't know what you're talking about." Mason pulled out his phone and played the recording. Sabrina's face went white as she heard her own voice discussing the affair, mocking her husband, laughing about his ignorance. "That's not... I can explain." "No need. I understand perfectly. You were bored, he was exciting, I was convenient." "It's a simple story." "Mason, I'm sorry. I made a mistake." "You made a choice. Every time you let him into our house, every time you lied to my face, every time you laughed at me with him, those were choices." Sabrina started crying. "I love you." "I never stopped loving you." "No, you didn't. You loved the security I provided. The house, the income, the stability. You loved having someone to take care of the boring parts of life while you had your fun. That's not true, isn't it?" "When's the last time you asked about my day? When's the last time you kissed me without being asked? When's the last time you looked at me the way you look at him?" Sabrina had no answer. Mason stood up and walked to the kitchen, returning with a manila envelope. "Divorce papers. I've already signed them. You can keep the house. I don't want it anymore. You can keep most of the savings too. I don't need much." "Mason, please." "We can work this out. We can go to counseling." "I don't want to work it out. I want to be free of you." "What about 15 years of marriage?" "What about them?" "You threw them away for a few months of excitement." Mason headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Sabrina? You might want to find a new boyfriend. Cody's going to be unavailable for a while." "What do you mean?" "Ask him yourself. If you can find him." Mason left his wife crying in their living room and drove back to his real home, the garage where he'd rebuilt himself from the ground up. Over the next few weeks, Mason watched his old life crumble from a distance. Sabrina called him repeatedly, begging him to reconsider, to give them another chance. He never answered. Cody disappeared entirely. Word around town was that he'd had some kind of breakdown, that he'd been seen at the bus station with a single suitcase, buying a ticket to nowhere in particular. Jason Crow was convicted of corruption and sentenced to 3 years in prison. The real estate scandal had destroyed his career and his reputation. Sabrina's world collapsed more slowly. Her friends began to distance themselves as word of the affair spread. Her job became uncomfortable when people started looking at her differently. Her family, who had always adored Mason, made their disappointment clear. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Mason ran into Sabrina at the grocery store. She looked older, worn down by the consequences of her choices. Her cart was full of frozen dinners and wine. "Mason," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sabrina, how are you?" "I'm good." "Really good." She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I heard you're seeing someone new." Mason wasn't, but he didn't correct her. "I'm focusing on myself right now." "I miss you." "I know." "Do you miss me?" Mason considered the question honestly. "I miss who I thought you were. But that person never existed, did she?" Sabrina started crying in the middle of the cereal aisle. Mason felt nothing watching her tears. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just the same cold numbness that had replaced his love for her. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix anything." "Sorry doesn't give me back the 15 years I wasted thinking I knew you." Mason walked away, leaving his ex-wife crying next to the cornflakes. He had said everything he needed to say. A year later, Mason was working as a freelance mechanic, traveling between small towns and fixing problems that nobody else wanted to deal with. He lived simply, owned little, and trusted no one completely. He was happy. Not the desperate happiness of someone trying to convince themselves they were okay, but the quiet contentment of someone who had faced the worst parts of himself and emerged intact. On a warm evening in September, Mason was working late in his garage when he heard a knock at the door. He opened it to find a woman in her 30s, attractive but tired-looking, holding a small suitcase. "Are you Mason Reed?" she asked. "Depends who's asking. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I used to be married to Cody." Mason studied her face, seeing the intelligence behind the weariness. "What can I do for you?" "I know what you did to him. I know what he did to you. I want to learn." "Learn what?" "How to make someone pay for what they've done." Mason stepped aside and let her in. As she walked past him into the garage, he caught a glimpse of the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had burned in him for so long. "It's not as satisfying as you think it will be," he warned. "Maybe not, but it's better than doing nothing." Mason closed the door and smiled. The old Mason Reed would have sent her away, would have told her to forgive and forget, to be the bigger person. But the old Mason Reed was dead. What remained was something harder, colder, more honest about the nature of